A lonely deer looks up, startled, afraid.
Are they wolves? Are they coming for me?
My name is Scythe. I was not always like this. A roe deer destined to exist alone in the forest, living with the nightmare thought of being torn to pieces by packs of hunting hounds. This is my story. Back in the mists of time, in an era of myth and legend, in what you would call the Iron Age, I lived among the Druids and Celtic tribes of Ireland. I was held in the highest esteem as the eldest daughter of Bodaric and the granddaughter of Dagda, the mighty Celtic god of fertility and the earth. I was known as the pagan goddess of nature.
Scythe was a beautiful young woman, with many admirers. She lived in the kingdom of her father, Bodaric, in the Sheer Firmin in Tipperary. Her father was a great warrior and head chieftain of the Tuatha De Danann tribe.
Scythe caught the eye of Ferdaric, a powerful sorcerer in the Tuatha De Danann. His talent for magic had earned him the reputation for cruelty and wickedness. He became known as the Celtic god of evil, and he wanted Scythe.
Scythe!
I am my Lord Doric.
Do not be nervous of me, Scythe, and do not believe the stories about me and my magic.
No, my lord.
Scythe, I have watched you for many months. You are the most beautiful woman in Sheer Firmin. You intoxicate me. Your every move, your every look fills my dreams with passion. I desire you, Scythe.
Please, my lord, I'm not worthy.
Do not belittle yourself, Scythe. You are every man's fantasy, and I will make you mine. I humbly ask for your hand in marriage.
Oh, please, my lord, I don't know what to say.
It's simple, Scythe. Say you will marry me and live your life with me.
You flatter me, but I do not love you.
You will learn to love me.
And I do not want you. Your weasel words cannot hide what you really are. No, I will not marry you.
You refuse me?
Yes, I refuse you, Frederick.
Very well. If I cannot have you, then no one else will. I will transform you into a doe, and you will wander in the wilderness until you change your mind. Agree to marry me, and I will return you to human form. Unless the wolves have got you first.
And with that, he tapped her with his sorcerer's wand, and, with a scream, the beautiful maiden was changed into a deer, and ran off with terrified eyes into the forest.
For 3 long years, Scythe languished in the wasteland of the forests and plains of Munster, living every moment in fear of being torn to pieces by the wolves and the packs of hunting hounds, some of whom were sent out by Ferdaric himself.
Gela!
My lord.
Find her. Find that bitch rogue here and bring her to me. She has evaded you for too long, and my patience is ended. Take the dogs once again, and do not return without her. In one piece or many.
Yes, my lord.
With a heavy heart, Gela once more led the hounds into the forest, and this time, after a long chase, cornered an exhausted Scythe.
Don't worry. I know who you are. You are Scythe. I know of your suffering. I know of the pain you have endured because of the wickedness of my master Ferdaric. But I will hold the hounds back. While you run, run as fast as you can to Ra'almu.
Ra'almu? What is that?
Ra'almu is known as the Fort of Almain. It is the home of Fina.
I've heard of them. They're great warriors.
They are, and none more so than their chieftain, Fionn McCool.
Fionn McCool.
You will be safe there, and what's more, the spell put upon you by Ferdaric will be broken once you've entered Ra'almu.
You mean I'll become human again?
Yes, you will once again become the beautiful maiden you were 3 years ago.
And with that, Scythe fled, bounding through the glens and forests to make her way to the home of Fionn McCool.
But Fionn McCool was himself out hunting that day. His pack of dogs were led by 2 legendary hounds named Bran and Skjollan.
They were not ordinary hounds. They were from the other world. Bran and Skjollan were the cousins of Fionn and followed him everywhere. They were both born in the form of hounds because, before their birth, their mother, Fion's aunt, Urna, was changed into a wolfhound by the Queen of Dal na Riva, due to jealousy.
Now in the forest near Almu, Bran and Sholon picked up the scent of a roe deer and pursued her relentlessly until they surrounded the terrified Sive.
Now surely I shall die.
Fionn rode up pleased at the capture of the white doe he saw before him.
Well done, Bran and Sholon. You have hunted well, my cousins. We shall feast royally tonight.
Wait, cousin!
For what, Sholon?
This deer is not what she seems. Are you?
No, my name is Scythe. I was transformed into a deer by the sorcerer Ferduric for rejecting his advances. But how did you know?
I am Bran, the Raven, and this is my sister Skjolin, the survivor. We were also created human, but became hounds when our mother was changed into the form of a dog before we were born.
Very well. Bring Sai back to Ralmu. We will look after you.
Fiona and his party escorted Sive home to Almu. As soon as her cloven hooves touched the ground within the fort, she transformed into the beautiful woman she once was.
Fionn McCool was smitten.
I have never seen such beauty. Welcome to Ralmu. If you will allow it, make this your new home.
Thank you, my lord.
Remain here with me, and I swear I will renounce hunting forever. No animal in the forest need ever fear me. In return, say you will marry me.
Fiona had fallen hopelessly in love with the beautiful goddess from the other world. They were soon married, and the Fianna hardly saw their leader. So enchanted was he by his new beloved. It was not long before Sive became pregnant.
But barely a year of their happiness had passed when Fionn McCool received some bad news.
My lord, I come with a message from the king. The Marauders are attacking Kerry. You are commanded to lead the Fianna into Kerry to defend our land from the invaders.
Fiona did not hesitate.
But my love, what about our child?
You will be safe here in Ralmu. Don't worry. I shall return victorious in time for the birth of our child.
Be safe, my love. I shall watch for you every day.
With the last kiss to his wife, Fionn McCool set off for Kerry with his troops of the Fianna and, of course, his faithful hounds, Bran and Skjolin.
True to her word, Sive watched for him every day. Barely a week had gone by when her face turned to delight and her heart fluttered with joy. Coming out of the forest, she saw first Bran and Skolon bounding happily towards the fort, and then her beloved Fionn. Sive rushed, exuberant, out of the safety of Ra'almu to greet him.
The trap was set.
For it was not the beloved and his council host, but the wicked Fardurg, who had used his magical powers to transform himself and his men into likenesses of the dogs and of Fionn. As Sive held out her arms to embrace her husband, the transformation vanished.
You! Where is my husband?
Still fighting the invaders, I imagine. But you will not escape my spell a second time. This time, running into Ra'almu will not save you.
And with that, he once again tapped Sive with his wand. And once again, she was transformed into a roe deer. Terrified, she ran into the fort, but the safety of its walls did nothing.
She remained a deer.
With Ferduric's cruel laughter tormenting her ears, she fled into the forest as the helpless servant looked on.
Some time later, Fionn McCool returned in triumph from vanquishing the invaders from the shores of Kerry. But that triumph was short-lived.
Where is my wife? Where is Sive?
My lord, she is gone.
Gone?
Taken by Ferdurg.
How?
He used his sorcerer magic to transform himself into a likeness of you, my lord. When the lady Sive saw him, she rushed out of the safety of the fort, and he used his wand to turn her once more into a deer. The sun saved her, Ralmu could not save her from the spell, and she ran off into the forest.
And you did nothing?
My lord, I'm not a sorcerer.
Oh, it is a spear through my heart. My wife and my child, both gone. My life has ended.
No, my lord, you can find her. Search for her. You and Bran and Sholon and all the warriors of the Fianna. Let that be your mission and your hope.
My hope?
For 7 interminable years, Fionn McCool searched tirelessly for Sive in the forests and plains of Ireland, never giving up, fighting through the pain and the heartache. but to no avail. She was nowhere to be found.
His heartache turned to despair, and then to hopelessness.
But then one day, warriors of the Fianna were out hunting in the mountains and came across a wild boy. He ran off, afraid of these hunters, but they caught him and brought him back to their leader, Fionn McCool. They faced each other, the little boy frightened but defiant, and Fionn curious and intrigued.
What is your name, young man?
I have no name.
And where do you live?
In the forest.
And your mother and father?
I have no mother or father. When I was very small, I was brought up by a deer. But then she disappeared and I...
Come closer, young man.
Fionn looked searchingly into the child's face.
How old are you?
I don't know. Maybe 6 or 7.
Your face is familiar. You have the features of your mother, little fawn. Your mother is Sive, and she is my wife. I'm your father.
My father?
You say you have no name, little fawn. I shall call you that, Oisin.
Oisin.
And with that, another legend was born. But that is another story.
But as for Fionn McCool, he remained heartbroken as he continued his fruitless search for Sive.
He never found her.
No one knows Sive's fate. She remains lost somewhere in the forests of Ireland, lost in the mists of time, a tragic tale of the joy and the pain of love.
But what of Oisin?
Oisin grew up to be a great warrior, greater even than his father, Fionn McCool.
But more than that, he became famous as a singer, a lover of words, keeper of the old stories, and the greatest poet of Ireland.
Like his father, Fionn McCool, Oisin loved to hunt with the Fianna, especially with his friends.
Caelta, the swiftest of runners.
Oscar, skillful with his spear and sword.
And Gull MacMorna, the old warrior with the one eye.
On this day, after hunting in the woods on the Ring of Kerry, they came to rest down by the western shore of Ballinscalix Bay. As Fionn and his son looked out over the reddening evening sky of the Atlantic Ocean, they saw, coming towards them across the waves, a little white speck in the far distance.
What is that, father?
I can't see from here, Oisin.
I can. And I don't believe what I'm seeing. It's a horse. A white horse. Galloping over the sea.
Is that somebody riding it?
Yes, it's a woman. A young woman. With blonde hair. She looks like a princess.
As Fionn, Oisin and the Fianna watched on in awe and disbelief, the horse galloped up onto the beach and rode right up to Fionn McCool. The rider wore a dress of palest blue studded with stars. Everyone could see she was a great beauty. She spoke.
My name is Niamh Kinor.
Niamh of the golden hair. Where have you come from?
I come from Tirnanog.
Ah, the fabled land of eternal youth.
Yes, it lies west of the setting sun. My father is MacCanna MacLear. He is the king of Tirnanog.
So you're truly a princess.
And I have come to ask one thing.
What do you ask of us?
I ask for Oisin. Even on Tirnanog, we have heard so much about the beauty of his poetry and the sweetness of his singing with the harp. Oisin, I invite you to come. Come with me. Come on an adventure to Tirnanog, to the land of the ever-young. Come and be my husband.
The Fianna were stunned into silence, but fear swept through Fionn McCool. He knew that if this mysterious beauty who came out of the setting sun were to spirit away his precious son, he would never see him again.
Fionn looked at Niamh with hard eyes, and then at his son. But one look told him it was too late. The goddess had cast her spell. Oisin was hers.
Father, I must go with her to Tirnanog.
No! You must stay here, with the Fianna. This is where you belong.
No longer, father. Niamh has enchanted me. I'm drunk with love. I must leave you.
Oisin said his goodbyes to his friends, to Caelta, to Oscar, and to Gull MacMorna, and to his father, Fionn, and turned to Niamh. She stretched out her hand and drew him to the back of Ember, her white stallion. Together, they rode back across the waves until they became a tiny speck in the distance and then were gone.
Fionn McCool's despair was complete. He had now lost not only his wife Sive, but also his only son.
And so it was that Oisin the poet came to live on the island of Tir na Nog.
Niamh's horse Ember had travelled fast for several days and nights without stopping, over the stormy seas until they reached Tir na Nog. Oisin thought little of those he had left behind, as he was welcomed by Niamh's father, the king, and invited to a great feast in the royal palace.
Oisin immediately felt at home. Tir na Nog was everything he had imagined it to be. Filled with birdsong. All year round there was blossom on the trees and flowers of every kind and colour. The young men and women played music, sang and danced, and laughed.
Because on Tir na Nog, no one ever grew old.
Oisin's fame as a poet and singer grew ever stronger as he told incredible stories of his time with Athena.
And of course, it won the hand of the most beautiful woman in the land. Before long, Oisin and Niamh had wed, and Oisin had no regrets about his new life in this magical land.
All the more so, when within 3 years they had 3 children, 2 boys, Oscar and Finn, and a daughter, Lorna Món, which means flower of women.
Oisin quickly lost track of time, but sometimes he thought of his friends in Fianna and of his father, Fionn McCool.
Those thoughts grew, and Niamh sensed that something had changed.
What is it? Are you no longer happy here on Tir na Nog?
Of course I'm happy. I've had 3 happy years, and I long for many more. It's only that I ache to see my friends and my father.
Don't leave here, Oisin, for if you go, you will never return.
Of course I'll return. My heart is with you. But for now, I must go.
Oisin looked lovingly at his wife, but she could not meet his gaze. She looked away, with tears in her eyes, knowing his mind was made up.
And knowing something she lacked the courage to tell him, knowing that he would have to find out for himself.
Niamh brought out her magical horse Ember. Oisin kissed Niamh in her farewell, mounted Ember, and prepared to leave.
Wait! There is one thing you must know. When you reach the land of your people, much will have changed. You will not recognize it, and I do not think you will find your friends. But whatever you do not set foot on that land. If you do, there is no hope of you ever returning here to Tir na Nog. You must always stay on this beautiful horse, and then you can ride home again.
Oisin was puzzled, but promised to always stay on Ember. They rode across the glistening seas back to the land of his birth, to Ireland. In no time at all, he seemed to be back at Vanskellig's Bay, the land that he loved, and where he had first seen Niamh.
And yet, everything seemed changed.
When he rode to the places he knew, where he had spent many happy days with the Fianna, they were overgrown with weeds, with grass and moss.
There were people, but they all seemed tiny and weak, not at all like the great hunters and warriors that he knew.
He rode on until he came to the great fortress of Fionn McCool himself. Nothing was there. Everything was overgrown, with nettles and thistles.
He stopped an old couple and asked them,
Do you know of Clota the Swift, of Oscar the Warrior, and Golmut Morna of the One Eye, and Fionn McCool, the great leader?
Oh yes, I remember hearing of such people from my grandfather.
That's right. When I was a boy, I heard tell of such names. Names from the old legends.
From 300 years ago, people say.
300 years? You must be mistaken. I lived with them not 3 years ago. I hunted with them on the Ring of Kerry.
The old couple stared blankly at him, shook their heads, and went on their way.
What Niamh lacked the courage to tell her husband was that, on Tir na Nog, the land where nobody grew old, 3 years was actually 300 years in Ireland.
As Oisin rode on, the reality slowly dawned on him. Niamh had been right. He would never see his friends again, or his father.
a terrible loneliness fell on him.
As dark thoughts swirled around his head, he came across 2 monks struggling to move a rock onto a wagon from the field they were ploughing.
Oisin knew he had the strength to easily move the rock, but he hadn't forgotten what Niamh had told him. He knew he must not touch Irish soil. He decided that if he angled himself in the horse's saddle, he could still help them move the stone.
He leaned down, and together with the group pushed, and the stone began to slowly give way.
But then the leather strap on his saddle snapped in two, and Oisin fell to the ground, straight onto Irish soil.
All at once, Emmer fled, galloping towards the sea, knowing his task was no more.
The monks rushed to help Oisin, but recoiled in horror. In front of their eyes, this young warrior was aging, changing into a withered, frail old man. It was as if his body was aging 300 years in the space of seconds.
Instantly, Oisin had become the oldest man in Ireland.
The monks panicked. They knew they could do nothing for this old man, but decided to take him to their monastery and their leader, St. Patrick.
Ireland was no longer a pagan country. Within the last 300 years, Christianity had taken over the land.
Some say that Oisin accepted this new faith and allowed himself to be baptized by St. Patrick.
Others say he argued long and hard with Patrick, denying Christianity and finding fault with the new faith.
Either way, the old Oisin died soon afterwards, telling stories of the Fianna and of Tir na nÓg.
Oisin had lost his wife Niamh, his father, Fionn McCrew, and his mother Side. He had only the memories, swirling like mist through his head.
But we here in Ireland have a more tangible memory. There is Cahir, a stone fort on the edge of our town. No one knows for certain who built it, or how old it is. Some say it was built by the giants, by the Ishi, the fairy folk.
It is dedicated to Saibhín, to young Saibh, and gives our town its name, Cahir Saibhín.
I'm going to do three pieces. The first one is called The Wise Woman of Clontarf, followed by a piece called My Legions, and then the last one is called The Nest. And, well, they're all other stories, so I'll just start playing.
story is all about Betty and Bab's hair salon. And everything was going not great. Betty was upstart, Oxter in debt. The hounds of revenue were after her. Everything was all about VAT. Everything was all about money. The dryer broke, but it burnt Mrs. Hennessy's head while she was under it. And now she was threatening to sue, and she just didn't know what to do. And she was looking at all the bills and all the revenue and all the horrible. And suddenly, this stranger came in. He had a red cape. He had 2 horns in his head. His nice little black beard. And he sat down. And he said, "Hi." "Oh," she said, "hello, and how are you? I suppose the shop back inside." Yes. So she started anyway, and believe me, it's very hard to cut a man's hair when he's got 2 horns coming out. And as she was going at it, everyone was saying, "How's business?" "Oh," she said, "it's not too bad at all. Sure, you know, we could all do it a grand, couldn't we?" Oh my God, I'm the company of rich people. We could all do it a grand, couldn't we? Anyway, things are all right. And he said, "How would you like all the money you want? Even all the money you desire? Even all the money you have ever dreamed of?" Oh, she said, "But what would I have to do in return?" "All I want is your soul." Oh my God, she said, "My soul? To sell my soul? But to have all the money I've ever wanted, ever desired, ever needed, ever dreamt? Will I?"
No.
Will I? Will I? "Anyone, so," she said. "I wait for a penny for a pound." "No," she said, "before you took me all right, and she said, "before anything else, I have to know, because I was going straight to TK Maxx and Killarney in the morning, you know, the shopping and everything, but in the end, and how long will I have?" He said, "You'll have 10 years to spend all that money." "Oh, fantastic," she said. "But at the end of the 10 years, I have to know, is hell that hot? Is it roasting? Or is it just kind of lukewarm?" Who said anything about hell? Oh, she said, Aren't you Beelzebub? Aren't you the Dark One? Aren't you Satan? Aren't you the morning star?" "No. I'm an assistant manager of the RIP Bank." Let's sink in. "In 10 years' time, I'm going to take your soul, and you're going to be paying back so many loans, and you're going to be turning loans into bank drafts, and you're going to be putting bank transfers in and trying to sort out all the bank charges, that you'll never have a day's peace." "Oh no," she said, "oh no, I thought you were just the devil." "But an assistant manager of the RIP Bank, what am I going to do?" And he left, and he said, "Enjoy all your money." She went off. She said, "Sweet mother of God, what am I going to do?" "Shopping." So she went out shopping, and she was up in Tralee every day, and she went back down in the evening, and she never thought of moving, man. But anyway, she'd fly out to Vegas for a weekend, and she'd come back, and she'd go here, and she'd be buying this, and she'd be buying ranges and washing machines, and every kind of thing you can imagine. That's in my head. And cars and pianos and champagne as well, and all that kind of thing. And jewellery, she'd have everything. Oh, Jesus, she was off buying Angora goats and deer hounds and all kinds of things. Everything you can imagine. And after a while, who came in for a perm? And she said, "No, you can't have a perm now, Jory," because Jory was a wizard with the numbers. Jory was a wizard with the numbers. And she said, "Oh, Jory, you better get a perm. Get a nice asymmetrical cut now, and you'll be fine." And Victoria, but she said, oh, I'm telling my story, Jerry. I'm after selling my soul. And Jerry said, to the devil? She said, oh no, to an assistant manager of the RIP bank. And he's coming, can you do anything, Jerry? And Jerry said, no, we have no control over him because he takes the financial controller to lunch 3 days a week. No control over him. What'll I do, Betty said, what'll I do? That's a fine one. There was a drum there earlier. What'll I do? And Jerry said, look, I have a very little special bag here. If you can get the assistant manager of the RIP bank to jump inside that bag, you can turn him into whatever you want. Oh, crush, that's good, Jerry. What do I owe? Oh, that's fine. Oh, yeah, but that's that. Sure, give me a free haircut. And after Jerry went to Betty was there, she said, oh, what? God, I'm always... Who came in, of course? Babs. Babs was always late. She was always a bit of a kind of a... And she said, Babs, wait, I tell you, I'm after selling my soul. I found with the devil as the assistant manager of the RIP bank, but I have a bag here. And if we can get him into it, we can turn him into whatever we want. And Babs said, how about like a constipated pigeon constantly flying over the head of an American president? Whichever one we want. A or B? No, Betty said, no, that's a bit crap really, isn't it? How about like an economic migrant suffering through the world? No, I can't. She said, sure, look, we'll come up with it. Oh, he's coming. So Babs got out of the way and Betty was here. She said, how will I get it? How will I get it? Hi. Did you enjoy spending all that money? Oh, she said, I did. I spent just about every last bit of it. And you know what I'm left with? An old tuppence that an old man spat on, a baby shat on, and it went through the constitution of a cow. And we all know how assistant managers of the RIP bank love dirty money. Very sad. Did an old man really spit on it? Oh, he did. And did a baby really? Oh, he did. Did it really go through the constitution of a cow? Oh, did she say? It's rotten. It's dirty. It's filthy. It doesn't sound in the bag there. Well, your man ran over, hopped into the bag, and she tied it up. And she said, Babs, I have him. What will we turn him into? Pigeon, no use. Migrant, no use. Something that will torture him for the rest of his life. Jesus. We'll turn him into a storyteller, goat farmer down in South Kerry, and he'll never make any good money. Now, we have another story, and there can be a running theme to my story, but that's all right. Oh, lovely dog. How's the going? Hello there. Good job, Edwin Rob. So this story is all about a shepherd. And this shepherd, very happy, lived up in the mountains. And in this kingdom where he was, the king fancied himself as very important. And whenever the king, everybody that heard it would have to say, God bless you. And the people down out the road there would hear it and they would say, God bless you. And the people over the hotel would hear it and they would say, God bless you. And everybody in the kingdom had said, God bless you. And this was great, it would happen, and the shepherd was up in the hill, he'd come along, he'd hear, bless you, God bless you. He didn't bother saying anything, just find out, and he'd be above minding his sheep. Jesus and the tourists come along. They get everywhere, these. You open the door, they're there. And the tourist was walking along and he heard, "Bless you! Bless you! God bless you!" He looked up at the shepherd and he heard straight down to the king. He went, "Oh, Your Majesty," the tittle-tattler of a tourist. And he went straight down to the king. He said, "Your Majesty, there's a shepherd up on that mountain, and he doesn't say bless you when you sneeze." And the king said, "Get this shepherd here." So the soldiers headed off. Now the shepherd had a small little gift, and it was a very handy little gift, and I hope I can actually do it. I'll have to invest, I'd say, at some stage, but it was a whistle. And the shepherd would go, and wherever he went, the sheep would go here, the sheep would go there, the sheep would come here, and they'd fall down, asleep. And this was great, and he had his whistle. He was just about to blow it when the soldiers caught him up. He put the whistle into his pocket, and they brought him down to the king. And the king said, "Now, shepherd, will you say, 'God bless me'?" And the shepherd was there, and he said, "All right, God bless me." And the king said, "You don't understand, poor shepherd. I want you to say, 'God bless me.'" And the shepherd said, "Oh, I'm very sorry, Your Majesty. God bless me." And the king said, "Right. Throw him into the cave of the white savage bear that hasn't been fed in 5 weeks." So they cut the shepherd and they threw him into the cave and they closed the door. It was all down. And after a while he saw 2 red eyes. And he could hear. And he could smell the breath of the bear that hasn't been fed in a while. And the eyes were getting bigger. And the growl was getting louder. And the smell was getting stronger. The shepherd was thinking, but the shepherd's father told him, if you ever come across a traffic warden, a mad toddler, or a taxman, stare him right in the face. Stare him down, he said. So he caught the bear's eyes. And the bear stopped. And the shepherd moved a little bit closer. And the bear moved a little bit back. And the shepherd moved a little bit closer. And the bear moved a little bit back. And the shepherd moved a little bit closer. And the bear hit himself up against the back of the cave. And they stayed like that all night. Until the next morning, the soldier said, "You know something? That bear, he never eats the pancreas. We better clean out the cave." And they went in and they opened the door, and who was there in front of him? Let's start that again. They opened the door, and who was in front of them? Drinks all around. They brought the shepherd up to the king, and the king said, "Now, shepherd, you have spent the most terrifying night of your life with a bear that hasn't been fed in 5 weeks. Will you now say, 'God bless me'?" And the shepherd was, "Okay, God bless me." The king said, "Right. There's no other choice but you're being thrown into the cave with the 5 stickleback hogs who haven't been fed in 7 weeks." And they caught him and they threw him into the cave. Now, stickleback hogs are a mixture of pigs, porcupines, and politicians. They're rotten. He was in there, and he saw 2 green eyes. And he saw another pair of green eyes. Another one, another one, another one. 10 eyes looking at him. And he looked at one pair of the green eyes, but the other 4 started getting closer. Then he looked at another pair of the green eyes, but the other 4 still came closer. He thought, what did he think of? The whistle.
On the whistle.
He pulled it out, and he went, you see? And if he did, stickleback hogs started dancing. They were Irish dancing, they were waltzing, they were tangling, they were even break dancing, but because of insurance purposes I can't show you. But believe me, you missed out on that. And they danced the whole night long until they were thrown up in a big heap. The next morning, the soldiers went down and they said, Jesus, those stickleback hogs, they never eat teeth or toenails, the place will be destroyed with them without them. And they opened the door and who was in front of them? The shepherd! And they brought him up to the king. Here again. Well, shepherd, he said, this could be your very last chance. Will you say, God bless me? And the shepherd said, God bless me. So he said, take him out, take him out, take him out, take him out. I want the queen, I want the princess, I want all the wise men and women of my kingdom right here. So 3 buses went up from Inverrag, because that's where they are. And they arrived up, they had a huge meeting, and they figured it out. And the king sat down, the queen was on one side, the princess was on the other, all the Inverrag wise people were at the back. And brought in the shepherd. And the king said, now, this is your last chance. Believe me, it is. You say, God bless me. And the shepherd was there. Of course, he was looking around him. He didn't notice all the beautiful people in Inverrag. He didn't notice the queen, but he saw the princess. She was like Lady Gaga. And he went, and the princess went, and the shepherd went, and the princess went, and the shepherd went, and the king said, enough! Saddle up the royal coach, we're going on a journey. So the king and the shepherd headed off, and they had 6 beautiful black horses in the royal coach, and they headed off to a lake, a huge lake. There was people skating on it, there was ducks walking on it, there was lots of things happening on it, it was frozen over. And the king said, this is not a lake, this is a diamond, a huge diamond. I will give you this diamond if you will just say, God bless me. And then the shepherd said, yeah, I could get that, and I could say it and everything, but I want to marry the princess. She's beautiful. She's like Lady Gaga. And he said, be stupid, you'll be king after me. Drive on. So they drove on to the silver forest. The trees were made of? Silver. The branches were made of? Silver. The birds were made of? Silver. The droppings were made of? Silver. And the king said, you can have the silver forest and the diamond lake. You will just please say, God bless me. And the shepherd said, yeah, I could see that, and I could get the forest, and I could get the lake, and I just want to marry the princess. She is beautiful. She is the woman for me. We're going to have such a great time. I know it from all the going on. Definitely going to happen. And the king said, drive on. And they came to the golden palace. The walls were made of? Gold. The pictures on the walls were made of? Gold. The toilet roll was made of? Gold. Tough job. And the king said, I will give you the golden palace, the silver forest, and the diamond lake, if you will just hey, God bless me. And the shepherd said, yeah, all those things are nice, yeah, they're good, but all I want to do is marry your daughter. She is beautiful. And the king said, right, if she wants to, you can, because I have nothing else to offer you. My whole life is over because you won't say what I want. And they were back home, and the king said, daughter dearest, this nibbling little shepherd here wants to marry you. What do you say? And she said, and the shepherd went, and she went, and the king said, enough! We're going to have a royal wedding. We Mother of God. It was like the Greenway arrived tomorrow morning. There was people all over the place. The Pope was in to say the Mass. They had U2, God help us, that's all I can think of. Dr. Dre. Winona Ryder. We're doing the music, and they sat down. It was a great day by them, and all fine out. And the starter came out, and it was a bowl of bird's nest soup. And you can only imagine what a bird's nest tastes like, really. So that was all right. Anyway. The king had a sup of it. I know I paid a lot of money for this, but God help us. He said, I think it needs a bit of pepper. No. And he said, I think he needs another bit of pepper. And he tried again, he put a good spearmint in all this time, he lashed at it. And no. And he tried it again, and he said, it's an awful pity that Michael Jackson, achoo! And who was the first person to say bless you?
The shepherd.
And when the king heard it, he got And who became king after him? I'm going to off the floor for this. Who became king after him? Was he a good king? Yes! Did you have to say bless you if he sneezed? No! So if you wanted to, but it just wasn't a big deal. And himself and the princess, they lived Thank you, everyone.
Since this is Culture Night celebration, I thought I'd read poems particularly celebrating various forms of the arts. And one of what I'll start with is a poem called Amergon's Ship. A lot of you will be familiar with the public monument on the green in Waterville. Jeff earlier played the Milesians, commemorating the Milesian landing, the Amergon monument there, and it's made by Holger Lunze, the sculptor who is actually holding a workshop today on Bronze Age casting methods. Anyway, Amergon's Ship for Holger Lunze. Because he wanted simply to be as one with the swelling wave and the wind, with the salmon and with the stars clustered in the eye of the gannet. He sailed north when the four winds blossomed together in a compass, north being the petal that trembled towards the grey, ambiguous headlands the elders swore he scried from the tower infinitely far beyond the salty horizon. The ship's skin-lined planking breathed brine and wind, welded gust and swell in a coupling that surpassed navigation. Sea and ship hammered one another into one another's shape, shaped wind and weather to the poet's will, to be the voyage, to be the landfall, and the words that mark the landfall, to be the land and the land's creatures, to be the stones raised in commemoration, to be the ship beached forever on the land, and the words singing themselves into bronze. And a poem I'm going to read celebrating art, believe it or not, is called During Donald Trump's Inauguration. I was not celebrating Donald Trump's inauguration. This was back in January 2017. And as he talked particularly about borders, and borders as protection and as keep out and all sorts of things. For some reason, Paul Robeson came into my mind. Paul Robeson, the wonderful deep bass singer, famous for Old Man River and things. also famous for, you know, left-wing songs of various sorts. He's a wonderful version of Joe Hill. And when during the McCarthy era, Paul Robeson's passport was taken from him because he was a communist supporter, and he wasn't allowed. He wanted to sing at a mine workers meeting up across the border in Canada, but he wasn't allowed go by the State Department. So they brought up a flatback lorry up to the border and put up whatever sort of sound system there would have been, and he played the concert across the border to the assembled Mine Workers Union on the far side. You can get a recording of it. It's a very, very moving thing, particularly a speech he gave. So that was what I was celebrating during Donald Trump's inauguration. During Donald Trump's inauguration, I closed my eyes to conjure from the 1950s an image of that towering man, Paul Robeson, singing his heart and soul across the border between Washington State and Canada, when tides of race and power and wealth surged all as one to try to drown him out, snatching his passport lest his songs be heard by the Mine, Mill and Smelter Workers Union. I conjure the noisy flatback truck manoeuvred to the border, and the straining loudspeakers bearing the burden of his songs where his masters feared to grant him passage. And I conjured all those gathered thousands rising to Joe Hill, to Old Man River, and to Let My People Go, rising to anthems that might crack dividing walls. And this still I hoard, that profound voice rolling across the barriers built by poisoned money, urgent with the wish to make America good. A celebration of music in, I think it was the 24th of June last, and I know a few people here were at it. We had a wonderful concert in a cave up in the Valentia slate quarry called Peabury Safruish Pipers in the Cave, and the piper Matthew Cassida, frequent visitor to Carsveen, and a great friend of Sean Garvey was there, and the Scottish piper Alan MacDonald or Island Dolach. And two of the things that happened, Roisin Ní Rian from Topavina sang Aurán na Leabhar, which is Tomás Rua Sullivan's poem grieving the loss of his books when a boat went down which was supposed to be going from Derrynane over to Portmagee, and begins Cuan Bailey to Castlemaine and came to Valentia Harbour. And then Ellen Dolach, the Scottish piper, played the Irish tune Erin Ninyosin Kehi, and Erin Ninyosin Kehi could be translated as for all Ireland, I wouldn't say her name, or I wouldn't say who she is, so it's a secret love song. So in celebration of I wrote these dedicated to Matthew, because I'd already written poems to Alan MacDonald. Piper in the Cave, one leaves from lost books, that's the Aurán na Leabhar. When your laden thrones plumb the depths, and Roisin's voice scaled the poignant heights of loss and learning in Aurán na Leabhar, Tomás Rua's grief was recreated as sweetness. Pages from his books floated like counterpoints from the liberator's sunken boat in Derrynane. Valentia rediscovered itself as Bélinche, and through a bridge over Goleen Even Dara for the poet. Here was restoration, and here was recognition beneath the drill marks shaped by calloused hands that had shaken the hand of a poet of their own. Tonight, the cave echoed his heights, his depths. And that last bit, he would have known men who worked in the cave with hand tools, quarrying the slate. Her secret name. And when you and Elian Dólach played Éireann Yosin Cehi, drones and chanters, fingering every crevice of those quarried walls, the air itself lifted, there and then, swelling to fill all the space beyond us. Tiny stalactites gleaming on the cave's roof stirred themselves to throw off the layered aeons of slate above as they chimed to the music's exquisite probing. Were there words to Ellen's singing voice? If there were words, what language did he sing? No matter. We held the meaning of the music in our applause, our exaltation of her secret name. Many of you will have known Sean Garvey, known as singing, June of last year, or May of last year, that he died, and I wrote this poem almost immediately. It was the day after he died, which was a great shock. As you know, he was particularly associated with the song The Boys of Ornstraida that begins, "The town that climbs the mountain, looks upon the sea." He was also very well known for the Bonnie Bunch of Roses, and at an event earlier today on top of Bolus Head, we played a recording of it. But it always struck me that Sean's singing was, his first CD was called Ondal Amach, which means out from the ground or from the earth out, and it described the way he sang, not only how rooted and how real it was, but the earthy tone of his voice. So I built this poem around that. Earth Singer. So you won't, as I think you always knew, make old bones. The other world, its lines etched on your face as it echoed behind your songs, will now be your daily haunt. But you have travelled deep into the bones of that mountain that looks upon the sea, and rode out on Cuan Bélinche to meet others whose songs are shaped by the earth. And now you can make the same discoveries all over again without distraction, and know the dewy freshness of An Benchin Lochra blossoming into the Bonnie Bunch of Roses. Sing now, Achri, with the earth's old bones your sounding board. Sing Ondalav Amach. I'll read now what is probably the bleakest poem I ever wrote, just to cheer you up. But it's a poem that came out during, well, not during, but in an earlier stage of the war in Ukraine. And in March of last year, I had COVID, and I was isolating for almost 2 weeks, and it was during the siege of Mariupol, and it was on news things. I got very familiar with all the news on the phone and the tablet and so forth, and I was seeing all the time these newsreels of siege of Mariupol, and there was talk about a new type of weapon that might have been used called a thermobaric bomb. And I looked up, what could this mean? It had to do with pressure and heat and things. And then, there were places being bombed. You might remember the one particular one, a theatre that was being used as a shelter, and that became a target. And because it's what I do, and I'm interested in words, I looked up the etymology of target, and I found that the word target originally came from targa, which was a small round shield. If somebody was, this in medieval times, if somebody was protecting themselves with a shield, obviously the shield and the target became one. And even the word shelter came from shield. So all these things were going through my mind, and the horror of this thing that was happening in Mariupol that I couldn't comprehend. And then, of course, I realized, here was I feeling sorry for myself in bed with COVID and occupying myself looking up the meaning of words while all this incredible suffering was going on. But I was thinking of how the language can be shaped and debased by, what goes on when one person's definition of freedom is another person's definition of rebellion, and all sorts of things like that, where language shapes the way we think and the way we act, and how my language was completely inadequate to the idea of what was going on. Sheltering. I read about new weaponry, the old linguistic origins of thermobaric. News channels repeat and repeat enumerations of the unthinkable that I cannot absorb. I retreat into the familiar shelter of words. A target, the diminutive of target, originally meant a small round shield, a word that built itself into shelter, a shelter being a formation of shields. When target galvanized itself into verb, it first meant to shield, to offer shelter. No word of this, nor any measured shift of meaning over the centuries, is of any significance at this moment for those whose shelters are targets, or for those others who are targeting the sheltering basements of Mariupol. Aerial footage pulses with digital circles, fragmenting into outbursts of smoke above targets that had been theatres, had been hospitals, had been schools. Meaning has sunk unfathomably below words, howling itself towards silence. And I'm going to finish with another poem to do with that war, but I think, I hope, a happier, more hopeful poem. It's a poem called Fáilte Isteach, and I wrote it for Culture Night last year when in the hall in Cardaniel we had an event for Ukrainian people, mainly from Cardaniel, from various places. So I wrote this poem called Fáilte Isteach in Irish, but I read an English translation first for those whose Irish is rusty or maybe not there. They'll know what I'm talking about. Fáilte Isteach means welcome in. This would be the translation. There are references to, golden wheat and blue skies, things like that, which are the basis for the Ukrainian flag in blue and gold. At one time, land and its limits stretched like a flag to the earth's imagined corners. In sunlight, under a limpid blue sky, the golden wheat glowed like gratitude. Then the sky shuddered. The earth was riven the people's essence and hopes pierced. Now clouds are a dark mass over the land. The harvest is blighted, the earth poisoned. In time to come, this darkness will be cleared, the clay made whole, golden harvest reaped. In the meantime, you visitors of our times, see here our open door. Fáilte Isteach. And then that's the translation, the original Irish is this. Fáilte Isteach. Uair dá raibh, leat tír agus talamh iad féin, mar a bheith rat chun na ceithre háirde. Faoi ghiile na gréine, glé chuirme na spéire, bhí ór na cruneachta a bro go buíoch. An sin hawn chrech an spéir, scoilt an talamh, pálamh onathair agus dóchas na naoine. Anis tá scamal go dúach ó sceann talún, bleist ar an bhór agus nimh sa chré. Uair éigean festa, glanfar duibhise an air, leisfar tré, buinfar fór orga a ríis. Idir an dá linn a chuairteoirí na linne seo, fech ar noras ar leatharóibh. Bhí géistigh, ar mí